Chapter 15. Out of place. Breathing hard with her nerves on edge, Sierra dashed through the maze of makeshift barricades and deserted streets. The small town that had transformed into a nightmarish compound seemed to grow more hostile with every passing second. Her thoughts raced just as quickly as her feet, each step a desperate attempt to distance herself from Commander Guan Yin and her style of mercy. The forest loomed ahead, a dark silhouette against the graying sky. It was their agreed-upon rendezvous, a sanctuary where Dina and the others were waiting. Sierra knew she had to get to them before Chains could reveal their location to Commander Guan Yin, a merciless leader who'd kill them as casually as one swats a fly. Sierra's instinct screamed at her to keep running, but something about the site near where the executions took happen froze her in place. Sierra crouched lower behind the charred remains of the car, her eyes narrowing as she observed the scene unfolding before her. It was jarring to see a man emerge from a limo in such stark contrast to the grim surroundings. His fine suit and slick appearance seemed to belong to a different world entirely. A world untouched by the apocalypse, where Commander Guan Yin wasn't a harbinger of death. As he spoke with Commander Guan Yin, Sierra's mind raced with questions. Who was this man? What could he possibly have to do with the military operation spearheaded by the commander? Whatever their conversation was about, she had a sinking feeling it wouldn't bode well for her and her group. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Even through the tinted glass of her sunglasses, Sierra could feel the piercing gaze of Commander Guan Yin. It was as if the commander had sensed her presence, and a shiver crawled down Sierra's spine. Sierra was perched behind her makeshift hideout, her breath shallow, her eyes focused. She was close enough to hear the dialogue between Commander Guan Yin and the well-dressed man, and the nonchalance in his voice chilled her to the bone. "So, doing a little housekeeping, are we, dear Guan?" The man quipped, his words tinged with a morbid sense of humor that contrasted sharply with the gravity of the situation. What shocked Sierra even more was what happened next. The man effortlessly slid a sleek phone from a pocket of his finely tailored suit, as if the apocalypse had left his world untouched. He dialed a number and began speaking. Sierra's eyes widened in disbelief, and a sense of foreboding gripped her. After the EMP attack, electronic communications were thought to be crippled. Even military comms had been severely affected. Yet here he was, casually making a phone call, indicating a level of technological safeguarding that seemed impossible given current circumstances. She couldn't make out the voice on the other end, but the ease with which this enigmatic figure was navigating the post-apocalyptic world unnerved her as she thought of even more questions she wanted answered. What kind of influence and power did he, and by extension, Commander Guan Yin, wield? The mere act of making a phone call seemed to defy the constraints of their current reality, suggesting that they were part of a network or organization that had prepared for this level of catastrophe, or worse, might have had a role in causing it. A fresh wave of dread washed over Sierra. Understanding the gravity of the new information, she knew she had to get back to Dina and the others. Every fiber of her being screamed at her to leave, to run and relay this information. But her instincts told her to wait a little longer. Who knows what else she might hear that could prove crucial for their survival? Sierra's heart pounded as she eavesdropped on the enigmatic, well-dressed man's conversation. The words, "cleared the area of vermin," and "entrance cleared and secure," caught her attention immediately. What was this entrance he spoke of, and why was its security so important? The mention of Adams was another puzzle. She wondered who this person could be, and what role he played in this unfolding saga. Why was Adams in what remained of South Korea, and why was it significant that he had eluded capture? The man's casual farewell, "Auf Wiedersehen, tschüss," unnerved her. He was evidently multilingual, and the use of German suggested an international scope to whatever operation they were a part of. With his phone call concluded, the incongruously well-dressed man refocused his attention on Guan Yin. "Your priority is to maintain security in this area. I want a 5-mile perimeter where no one is allowed entry. Understood?" Commander Guan Yin nodded without hesitation, but couldn't suppress a note of frustration in her voice as she posed her own question. When can we expect additional troops and resources? We've suffered significant losses. The people here are armed. I was led to believe this would be addressed before our arrival, Mr. Eckhard. Mr. Eckhard. Sierra mumbled, committing it to memory. Eckhard tilted his head slightly and offered a wry smile as he answered Commander Guan Yin. The United Nations didn't prove as united as we'd hoped, so let's be grateful for what we have. As for your resupply, help is on the way. Convoys are already en route from the Texas ports. Perhaps you might find it useful to know that they've suffered greater losses than you, and yet have lodged fewer complaints. They understand the gravity of their mission, rather than being sidetracked by personal vendettas or distractions. With that, Eckhard began to whistle the same haunting melody that Sierra had heard just before the artillery fire commenced. What the hell is going on? Is he the one? Before Sierra could finish her thought, her peripheral vision caught the rapid approach of two figures. In a split second, she was roughly grabbed by two men in unusual military camouflage. They were so strong that her efforts to wrestle free were futile. One of the men quickly disarmed her, snatching the pistol from its leather holster and the Glock from her waist. Struggling and cursing under her breath, she was unceremoniously dragged back toward the two, holding a casual conversation among executed men. As she lifted her head, her eyes met those of Mr. Eckhard, who had apparently delayed his departure. The recognition in his eyes was instant, and a smug smile crept onto his lips, as if he had just found a missing chess piece. Now restrained in front of Eckhard by very tight grips of the two soldiers, Sierra felt like both a cornered animal and a critical piece in unraveling this sinister operation. A wave of dread washed over her, but she steeled herself, focusing intently as she waited for Eckhard to speak. Her mind was a whirlwind of possible escape routes and contingencies. Aren't you a captivating find? Sierra Squires in the flesh, Eckhard mused, locking eyes with the young woman who had eluded capture at the Battle of Squires Ranch. My father always said that it's the small details that come back to haunt you. Just as he spoke, Commander Guan Yin unholstered her pistol, leveling it at Sierra as if granting a final act of mercy. Halt! Eckhard's voice thundered with authority. What do you think you're doing? Her brother is among those advancing toward your position. She could be invaluable in dismantling their little resistance to the New World Order. With a contemptuous glare, Sierra spat onto Eckhard's pristine suit, catching sight of the silver lightning bolt insignias stitched into his lapel as she did. I will never help you harm those I care for, you Nazi wannabe. For a fleeting instant, Eckhard appeared captivated by Sierra's piercing gaze, as if entranced by the unyielding spirit that blazed from her eyes. Mr. Eckhard, she belongs to me. I should be allowed to dispose of her as I see fit, Guan Yin insisted, trying to emphasize her claim on Sierra's life. Sierra began to retort, You can go No need for such coarse language, Eckhard interrupted, signaling one of his guards who promptly moved to gag Sierra. Actually, my dear Guan, she'll be accompanying me. Why do you think I went to the trouble of sacrificing one of my spies to rescue her from this, how shall I say, barbaric environment? Without breaking eye contact with Guan Yin, Eckhard subtly gestured with two fingers toward Chains. As if guided by an invisible hand, the sound of a suppressed gunshot filled the air, and half of Chains' head disintegrated into a pink mist. Sierra's thoughts were a chilling testament to the harshness of the world she now inhabited. Surrounded by fresh corpses, yet primarily concerned about whether any of Chains' brain matter had soiled her weapon. Suddenly, she felt the grips of the soldiers on her arms go slack. As their lifeless bodies dropped to the ground, Sierra's instincts kicked in. She dropped down swiftly, reclaiming her revolver from one of the fallen men. Whipping her head up, she sought out Guan Yin, her primary threat. Sierra's eyes widened as she saw Guan Yin aiming her pistol directly at her. But Sierra was faster. She executed a tactical roll, dodging the bullet that thudded into the ground where she had lay just a moment before. In one fluid motion, Sierra fired back. The .357 Magnum bullet grazed Guan Yin's cheek so closely that she could feel its searing heat as it whizzed by and through her long black hair. Again, Sierra rolled, but this time she yanked the body of the dead soldier along with her, using it as a makeshift shield against the incoming hail of bullets from Guan Yin. As she took cover, her eyes locked onto Eckhard, who was watching her intently from the sanctuary of his armored limousine. For a split second, their gazes connected in an electric exchange that seemed to last an eternity. In that moment, a universe of understanding passed between them, or so it seemed to Sierra. She understood the depths of his wickedness, and he likely sensed the unbreakable resolve that burned in her eyes. Neither would back down, and both knew that the stakes had just escalated in a game that was already perilous. Sierra peered through the limp arm of her deceased shield. Sierra sensed from Eckhard's expression that he might actually be rooting for her to survive this harrowing situation. Bullets began hitting the limousine like raindrops, only leaving their marks upon the impenetrable steel and glass. "Sierra!" A voice she recognized called out. "Blankenship!" Sierra called out, her attention briefly shifting as Guan Yin redirected her gunfire toward him. "Get down!" Sierra shouted urgently, only to witness Blankenship being struck in the neck by one of Guan Yin's bullets. Blood spurted out from the wound as he collapsed. Wasting no more time, Guan Yin sprinted to the limousine and quickly got in. As the limousine sped off into the distance, the sounds of gunfire ceased, replaced by urgent footsteps as people rushed to check on Blankenship. Sierra quickly shrugged off the bullet-riddled body that had shielded her and sprinted over to where Blankenship lay. "Blankenship, hold on!" Sierra screamed as she reached his side. She pressed her hand against the bullet wound on his neck, trying to stanch the flow of blood, fully aware that her efforts could only extend his life by a few agonizing seconds. "Why? Why did you expose yourself like that?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief and a tear forming in her eyes, memories of Carlos's death flooding back into her consciousness. "My number was punched long ago. Help them," Blankenship rasped, his voice growing fainter. He pointed weakly toward Timmy, Katie, Carter, and Steph. His arm slowly fell back down to his side as his lifeblood seeped through the gaps between Sierra's fingers. The five of them stood in a somber circle around Blankenship's lifeless body, each weapon's barrel still warm from the recent battle. They were lost in their thoughts, contemplating the man who had just died, and what would come next in this merciless world they found themselves in. He was upset when you darted out into the open, in full view of their spotters. He wanted nothing more than to find you after you drew the artillery fire away from us, Katie said, breaking the silence. It had been many days since she had seen Sierra, specifically since that moment of bravery that now felt like a lifetime ago. "He didn't have to do this," Sierra replied softly, her eyes not leaving Blankenship. Carter and Timmy went to work, cutting free a nearby tarp to wrap around Blankenship's body. "We need to get moving. They'll be back, especially now that they know you're here. Guess this is what happens when you kill a high-ranking member of the Chinese army, huh, Sierra?" Sierra's eyes flashed with fury. In one swift motion, she was on her feet, hand clenched around Carter's throat. "You're blaming me for this?" she hissed, her voice tinged with outrage. No, that's not what I was saying or suggesting at all. I wouldn't, Sierra. We all know the stakes. We all know the risks," Carter stammered, his eyes wide with surprise and a little fear. Sierra's grip loosened and she took a step back, immediately regretting her burst of anger toward Carter. "He's right. We have to move. They're going to start killing everyone within a 5-mile radius of here, and I need to find Diana and the others," she said, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. Steph, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "Who's Dina?"